Hello, ladies and gentle friends. So today I'm going to be reviewing Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. So just some backstory, I actually was reading this for a dystopian literature class. I really liked it, so I figured, oh, let me just review it here. Also for that class, we're currently reading Orcs and Crakes, so when I finish that, I might end up reviewing it on this channel too. So look out for that. So I'm going to start with a kind of non-spoilery review. So pretty much it's about this teenage girl. It starts in the year 2024, about this girl living in Los Angeles, Lauren Olamina. So pretty much in this novel, climate change has resulted in a shortage of food, water, which means more competition for resources. There's a lot more violence, and there's also this drug called pyro that's on the market that causes people to pretty much want to start fires and gain pleasure from starting fires. So there's also the risk of like fires being started throughout California or throughout the West Coast. And a pretty big theme in this novel is this kind of pseudo-religion that Lauren is creating called Earthseed. And Earthseed pretty much differs from other religions. It's interesting because Lauren's dad is actually a minister or pastor of some sort at their local church in their neighborhood. So it's interesting how Lauren kind of creates her own religion based on everything that's happening around her. So throughout the novel, there's kind of these, I would kind of call them verses, in which Lauren kind of gives little details about Earthseed and what it is, what it means. So one that's on chapter 3, we do not worship God. We perceive and attend God. We learn from God. With forethought and work, we shape God. In the end, we yield to God. We adapt and endure, for we are Earthseed and God is change. So like that's a running theme in the novel. So pretty much in the novel, it says that Earthseed deals with an ongoing reality, not with supernatural authority figures. Worship is no good without action. With action, it is only useful if it steadies you, focuses your efforts, eases your mind. And the theory that I kind of had of like why Earthseed is kind of the way it is because of the fact that the world that Lauren lives in is pretty much based on survival and, you know, kind of doing what you have to do and adapting and changing. So I think it's kind of crafted based on the world that she lives in, and given the world she lives in, she's not going to be concerned with something like some kind of supernatural being. She's concerned with life in the present, and a big aspect of Earthseed is living in the present. So throughout the novel, we kind of see how bad or how dystopic the world is. So Lauren lives in this community of Robledo, and it's pretty much a gated community. The reason why it's gated is to avoid, you know, thieves and people from the outside coming into their neighborhood, because of the fact that, like, with the drug on the market and the fact that with the lack of resources, people are probably going to steal, right? Because, well, if I don't have water and you do, you know, everything's fair game. And there is kind of a shift in like privilege in the idea of like, you know, what you need, because, you know, usually you would think of like, oh, like owning a yacht, that's what someone who's privileged has. But in this society, it's pretty much having basic necessities such as water, food. Every once in a while, someone will try to steal like a TV or something, but still, it's basic necessities is really what people want, because no one has that. And as the novel goes on, there's like kind of cracks through like the security that the people in the community has, and Lauren seems to be the only person really noticing this. Like they keep getting like, you know, people in the neighborhood get robbed every other week, and it becomes every week through every other day, and it's kind of like, when are we not safe anymore? And within the novel, there is this kind of illusion of safety, because no one's really safe in this world, nor will they ever be. But it's just the fact that maybe people will hold on longer and hold out hope, which Lauren is kind of skeptical about. So at this point, I'm gonna get in kind of spoiler-ish territory. I'll try to keep it a minimum, but it's kind of hard not to spoil the novel. So if you haven't read it at this point, stop and go read it. So as I mentioned before, it starts in the year 2024, but we kind of follow Lauren through like her whole adolescence. So 2024, 2025, 2026. I think it kind of stops at 2027. But at the beginning of the novel, she's 14 years old. She's very smart, but, you know, she is limited in what she can do. So one thing she can do is guns are really important because, you know, being safe. So she's able to, you know, practice shooting, but her little brother is kind of too young to do it, but he wants to do it. And later in the novel, we kind of see, you know, where that kind of, I guess, need for independence, need to do certain things like that, where it gets him. So as I mentioned before, it gets to a point where the neighborhood is more and more unstable, and Lauren starts kind of planning a way out. She tells her close friend Joanne. Joanne gets freaked out and kind of snitches on her. And obviously that's not okay for Lauren. And her father pretty much says, we're fine right now. Don't worry about it. But of course, she kind of continues to worry about it. She kind of tries to educate herself in ways to survive outside of her neighborhood and outside, you know, in the wild. And as this is happening, as Lauren is kind of planning this, I don't want to say like escape, but pretty much like escape, you know, plan B type situation, her brother goes missing. I mean, and then he comes back, but then it's kind of not clear of like what he was doing and if he's telling the truth about what he was doing out there. And there's kind of like this like kind of tension that's like dragged out, like around like page like 96. It's kind of like, oh, Keith's gone, and then it's like, oh no, he came back, he's fine. And it kind of is like this like push and pull, and you're kind of like, okay, stop doing that, Keith. That's not funny, okay? So it's real, the reason why he keeps leaving is because he's making money. Being able is like an interpreter. He is able to read and write, so he helps other people who cannot. Well, like the people he's around are doing illegal things. He's kind of like, oh, well, it's not bad. I'm just kind of helping him do it, but I'm not like in it himself. So Lauren's birthday kind of rolls around, and this is actually the last time she sees her brother Keith. We found out that he dies, and he dies in a really gruesome, horrific way. And this kind of brings me to like the police issue, which kind of reflects how like it works in real life. But pretty much people don't call the police because the police will take forever to get there, and if they do get there, they'll pretty much try to make you pay in order to, you know, solve a crime, and even then nothing will get done. So pretty much that's the reason why there's so much like crime and violence, because the police don't really do anything. Like there were other times in the novel where, you know, there were robbed in their neighborhood and they didn't call the police because it was just like, what are they going to do? They're not going to be able to do anything. And after Keith's death, there are more and more incidents in which the neighborhood is broken into and robbed. And around this time, there's a kind of hope, but not really, because there's this community called Olivar in which some people may be able to get into, this coastal community that's supposed to be safer, whatever safer even means at this point. But, you know, there is this kind of racial disparity, and Lauren's father kind of remarks that like Black and Hispanic people in this neighborhood aren't going to be able to go into the Olivar community, whereas the white people will be able to. So it's still like this tension between that, and it's kind of intersection of, you know, race and privilege and the limitations of what you really can do in this society, even in this kind of dystopian society. So after this, there's this kind of shift in, you know, duties. So there was this kind of school that Lauren's stepmother, Corey, kind of ran, and Lauren helped, but she has to kind of take up the mantle for the school because Corey is going to end up teaching in her father's place. And since Lauren kind of planned ahead, she was kind of able to get out and take a backpack with enough resources out of the neighborhood and get to safety. And when she gets outside, she meets up with two people from her neighborhood, Harry and Zara. They made it out. Unfortunately, Zara pretty much informs Lauren that her stepmother and her brothers all died and were pretty much all murdered by the people who broke into the community. So at this point, Lauren, Harry, and Zara kind of try to travel up north where there is safety. The only problem is up north, jobs aren't guaranteed. Jobs are scarce because there are so many people trying to live there because it's, you know, safer than the southern parts of the West Coast. So as the three are traveling, they kind of meet up and help this family of three. And the family isn't really trying to be near them, but they kind of follow their... Lauren assumes it's because there's kind of like safety in numbers, and they figured, oh, these people helped us, so let's just stay by them. So Lauren ends up talking to one of the people. So there's Travis Douglas, Gloria Douglas, and their 6-month-old child. So they kind of band together, and through Earthseed, Lauren tries to like feed people like little bits and pieces of it. Like, I don't think she's actively trying to convert people, but she's kind of getting the word out in some way. So trying to condense it, pretty much along the way, they meet this man named Bankole. I think that's how you say his name. I'm not entirely sure. So they also saved these two women from being trapped under rubble, Allie and Jill. So they also kind of join them in their kind of group. And then there's kind of like a romance spark between Lauren and Bankole. And also along the way, they kind of meet even more people. This group is huge by like the end of the novel. I'm like, why are there so many people? Like, how is this even working? But then I thought, like, okay, maybe strength in numbers? Like, I guess The Walking Dead is like, okay, sure, more people help, but also, isn't this a little dangerous? I don't know how I feel about that. Okay, so by this point in the book, there's a lot of new characters, and I kind of forget their names. I know there's an Emery, a Tori, there's the guy named Grayson, I think. But the point is, a lot of people join, and I forget half of their names. So going back to the I'm all over the place, but going back to the hyper empathy thing that Lauren has, we see it more later in the novel. So at some point she sees someone get shot, and she, you know, feels as though she got shot herself. And the person that dies, she pretty much, in a way, dies with them. So this is when you see like how extreme and how like debilitating this hyper empathy really is at this point. Also, there are other characters who have hyper empathy as well, but they do try to hide it because, you know, why would you want people to know this? This also goes into like why Lauren's father kind of forced her to hide her hyper empathy. So pretty much with the slave labor that goes on in the society, they kind of want people who have hyper empathy. So at this point, they kind of make it up somewhat north. But Bankole kind of has this plot of land that his sister, I believe, and her husband live, but unfortunately once they actually get there, the whole place is burned down in ash, and it's presumed that, you know, his sister is dead. So Bankole goes to the police, but like nothing is really done, and he has to pay out a bunch of money because they just want people to pay them money for doing literally nothing. And pretty much Lauren kind of convinces them to stay there. They can plant crops, they can build shelter. Like, this is pretty much where she kind of wants the Earthseed community to be and to be able to thrive. So the novel kind of ends on a high note. Like, I haven't read the second novel, so I don't know where it goes after that, but it ends on a high note at least, even though like the world is still, you know, like how it is. But all in all, I really love this book. It's definitely like one of my favorite dystopian novels. I don't know if like other people classify this as dystopian. I do, partially because I literally read this for a dystopian literature class, so maybe I'm biased. The religion aspect is also interesting in this book because it's kind of subverting your expectations, because it's like, oh, it's not like God in the way that like people usually imagine it. It's kind of like God as far as like an abstract, you know, idea. God is change. So I thought, no, that's pretty cool. I can get down with Earthseed, you know? But like, I think I do definitely want to read more Octavia Butler, because this is kind of like, it kind of scared me because I'm just like, oh, this is very real. And this is like, takes place in 2024. And I'm just thinking like, should I be worried about something? Should I be, a couple years, should I be worried about something? I don't know, but this is like, I feel like she's like psychic. Like, how did she know this was gonna, like all this stuff, like some of the stuff I'm like, I can already see this happening now. So it's kind of scary. And I think the thing about dystopian novels is that like, we can kind of remove ourselves from it because it either takes place like really far into the future, or if it takes place like, you know, like around now, it's like really outlandish and we're just like, oh, that'll never happen. But like this, and I think even like The Handmaid's Tale to an extent, I'm kind of just like, I can see this happening. This isn't far removed. And I think that's why it's kind of like scary and kind of makes you apprehensive, because it's like, well, some of this is already happening or has already happened. So if it gets worse, it's like, not to be cynical, but like I wouldn't be surprised if it did. So that is my review on Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope I wasn't just like rambling the whole time, although I kind of assumed that I was. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe and stick around for more book related videos such as this book review. Bye.